welcome back for episode number 148 of the weekly playback. I only have 2 games to discuss, but I do anticipate this being a longer episode, so let's just get started. Let's talk about Atlas Explore the World. This is a 2026 game for 1 to 4 players, designed by Robin Spaton-Eck, and the art is done by Madeline Fial, and it's published by Ion Game Design. This is a game that was just very recently on Kickstarter, and I believe that when the pledge manager opens, late pledges will be available. This is a review copy that I received from Ion Game Design, and I actually just very recently learned how to play it because I was teaching this game at an event held at Millennium Games recently. So I was teaching a bunch of people to how to play this game when they were coming to demo a bunch of different Ion games. So this is a really fun game with a bunch of different actions that will allow you to explore the world, and you're going to be doing a bunch of different things in this game, and it really does kind of simulate like exploring the world. So there's a lot to show you in terms of components, but the board is pretty big. So let me just see if I can just kind of give you a quick glance at the board and then put up pictures so that you can rely on the pictures to see everything that you need to see. So, and do be mindful that this is a prototype copy, so I'm sure that the actual game will be much nicer, the production copy that is. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, it's a very big board because it has the whole world on it. So, okay, let's try it again. Alrighty, here we go. Here is the board. So you can see that there's the whole world on it. At the very bottom of that pyramid, there is a blog tracker, and up here where my fingers are is where you're going to have some destination cards. So that is the board, and I will be relying on pictures for the rest of the time that I explain this game to you all. Okay, and this is what a player board looks like. So at the top here, you have a money tracker. At the bottom, you have an energy tracker, so like your battery level. And then here you'll see all the different actions which are available to you, which is super nice. And this is a dual layered board, and you're able to put in cubes over here in order to basically activate bonus actions. And you'll be removing tokens from here in order to strengthen your basic actions. So very cool player boards. These are very nice. So on your turn, so I guess the object of the game is basically to explore the world, right? So you're trying to explore the world, and each player has their own likes and dislikes. So you're going to be playing as a certain character that has their own likes and dislikes. So you're trying to explore the world in places where you will experience your likes, and you're trying to avoid experiencing your dislikes. And then once you've explored somewhere, you're going to have the option to affect the popularity of a certain aspect of traveling on that pyramid. And I'll explain how all of that works, which is just a really fun kind of mechanic in this game. Yeah, and you know, we'll talk about the blogging action and all of that. So let me just show you the characters that you can play as. So here are a bunch of different character cards, and each character will give you some kind of a bonus like action and benefit, and each character has a specific language that they know. And you'll see that most characters, except for this one, have 2 boxes here. In those boxes, you're going to be randomly dealt 2 tokens at the beginning of the game, and you have to decide what your character's likes and dislikes are. And you can't have the same color in both boxes, obviously, because someone can't like and dislike the same thing. So for example, let's suppose I had been dealt these 2 tokens to choose from. I could not have this in my like section and this in my dislike section because of the 2 same symbols that you see on half of the cube. So I would maybe have to turn one of them over. And these different symbols represent different likes and dislikes. So they were printed on the main board. I'm just gonna check and see if they are in the rule book because I don't want to have to open up the main board again. But basically the symbols represent different things like architecture, food, culture, history, religion, and so on. So the different symbols represent a whole bunch of different things that are associated with different countries. Ah yeah, here we go. They're called experiences. So these are all the different symbols that you will see on those tokens, and you are going to decide what you as the traveler like and dislike, and then you're going to try to travel to those countries that have the things that you dislike and avoid the things that you like and avoid the things that you dislike. So those are the traveler cards, and again, each person is fluent in a certain language. So for example, this one, she is an Arabic speaker, so she's going to pay 1 coin less when she explores Arabic speaking countries. And her special ability is persuasive. So when she works, she gains an extra 2 recharges. Well, that sucks because I actually played as her and I totally ignored that benefit up there about the recharging. Okay, so I really need to remember stuff when I play. I always tend to forget things. At the beginning of the game, when you're setting up, you have a whole bunch of different souvenir cards. So there's going to be a ton of replayability in this game, but you're basically going to pick 1 souvenir card and place out the associated souvenir in all of the countries listed. And the great thing about this game is that for every country that you will come across, whether it's a country card or a destination card, it's going to tell you where on the board that country appears so that you're not like searching all over. So you will know exactly where on the grid it appears. And so you're going to put out these souvenirs, which people will be able to collect, and souvenirs will give you points at the end of the game, and they will also allow you to activate bonus actions, which we will get to when I talk about that. So those are those. Each person is going to have 2 personal goals to start the game with, and you are able to collect more throughout the game. So the 2 personal goals you start with, one is going to be related to geography, and one is going to be related to flags. So the geography cards might say something like this. Gain at least 3 culinary experiences, and if you do that by the end of the game, you will score 8 points. Yeah, so a lot of them are related to the different types of experiences. Here's one that says explore at least 5 countries in different latitudes. So the different letters, you have that grid on the main board, so you would know what that is. Yeah, and then there's one for exploring countries around the equator and so on. So those are the geography goals. And then you'll have a flag goal that you start with. So for example, here's one. I'll actually show the one that I had, which I was so close to meeting. The sun. Explore at least 3 countries with a flag that has at least 1 sun on it. And you might be wondering, well, like, how do I know which countries' flags have suns on them? Well, there's actually a flag manual that comes with this game. So this is your entire flag manual, and it shows you every single flag in this world for all the different countries, and it tells you what things you can gain with that flag. So for example, there might be color bonuses, like, you know, get 3 flags that have white in it. So you can refer to this, look at this, see which flags have white on them, which flags have suns on them, and try to go to those countries when you are exploring. So the flag manual is very beneficial when playing this game. So again, you start with 1 geography and 1 flag personal goal, and you do have the opportunity of getting more of these throughout the game. There are party cards, which are people that if you have a party symbol in a country that you're exploring, that means you've made a friend. Now that friend might benefit you, but sometimes these friends turn out to be not so great and steal from you. But yeah, so these are like the different kinds of friends you might encounter, and each friend is going to give you a benefit for the country that they are from. So if you decide to explore that country, you can explore it for free. And if you decide to rest in that country, you can rest in that country for free. So a bunch of different cool friends that you can collect if you go partying in different countries. So that is the party deck, and that stays face down. And then you have an event deck. So you might trigger events when you are blogging. So blogging is one way that events get triggered, and they usually affect all the players. Like it might block off a certain part of the world, it might allow everyone to pick up a party card, and so on. So all different kinds of events, which are very cool. So those are those cards. Now let me show you some country cards. Well, before I show you country cards, I want to show you destination cards. So everyone at the beginning of the game starts out with the 2 personal goal cards and 4 destination cards. Now these destination cards have all the different countries of the world in them. And there are multiples for different countries within the destination cards. That is not so within the country decks cards, and I'll explain that in a minute. But let me just show you an example of a country card. So here is the United Kingdom, for example. So if you decide to explore the United Kingdom, it's going to cost you 5 coins. And these are the icons that are associated with the United Kingdom. So we have the first icon, the green one, which shows that Sydney Opera House. That represents architecture. The next icon, which is orange, represents history. And the last icon represents relaxing. I'm not sure why United Kingdom is associated with relaxing, but okay. And this card has a bonus at the bottom of it, which you would score at the end of the game. So you would get 3 points for every 2 architecture icons you have explored that you have in your tableau. So as you're exploring throughout the game, you're going to be stacking these cards up on top of one another so that you can always see which icons you have visible. And you definitely want to do that because you're going to be affecting the popularity of these different experiences and gain points for where those experiences are in the popularity pyramid at the end of the game. So that is an example of what a country card looks like. And as you can see at the bottom, it also tells you what attributes are associated with the flag. So this one shows you that it has red, white, and blue. So if you have some kind of a bonus goal card that wants you to collect flags that have red in them, then you know that this is going to satisfy that. And it also has a language icon. Now, not all countries have language icons because not all languages, because there are so many languages in the world, so not all languages are represented in this game, but a lot of countries do have languages. And the United Kingdom happens to have an English language token. So now if you've explored 2 countries that have an English language token, like for example, this one, Marshall Islands, and let's suppose you are not a native English speaker. So for example, my character would have worked perfectly because she's an Arabic speaker. And let's suppose she explored these 2 countries. She would now be able to collect a language token and add it next to her player board. And by collecting these language tokens, you are going to get points at the end of the game for every different language that you have mastered. So you also want to keep that in mind when you're exploring countries. So things that you collect will help you to get points at the end of the game. So these were the destination cards. Now let me show you the country cards, and there are so many of them. Again, 1 for every country. And the country cards offer you more exploration options, and they are listed in alphabetical order, and they will be at the top of the board in their respective continent decks. So for example, you will have a whole deck for Africa. So on the top, you will see Africa. And if at any point you decide you want to explore a certain country in Africa, you can explore that country with a destination card, which I just showed you, or you can decide to look through the country deck and pull out that country card and you explore it using that. Now, the one disadvantage to exploring countries by doing that is that you're not gonna know which symbols are on the card until you pull it out. And once you make the decision that you want to explore using a country card, then you have to do that because, you know, once you've seen the card, you can't change your mind. So let's suppose I want to explore Kenya. So here is Kenya. So as you can see, I will go through the deck and everything's going to be in alphabetical order, and it also has a number, so you can just simply, when at the end of the game, when you're done playing, it's really easy to recreate these decks because you can just look at the number and place it back in that number spot. So this is Kenya. So when you take the Kenya card, you can either explore Masai Mara National Reserve, and the cost to explore the National Reserve is 3 coins, and these are the icons associated with it. So of course you would see wildlife, and the last one is, I believe, scenery. Yes. Or you can decide to flip it over and explore one of these 2 sections of Kenya. So you can explore Nairobi. And if you decide to explore Nairobi, these are the icons that are associated with Nairobi. So you would get a city icon, you would get a culture icon, and you would get a culinary icon. And the cost to explore Nairobi is here. Or you can choose to explore Mombasa. And those are all the icons associated with Mombasa. And that is the cost to explore Mombasa. So I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about the explore action, but basically by exploring using country cards, you have more options of icons. But again, you don't know which icons are visible. However, with the destination cards in your hand, you know exactly which icons you'll be getting. And at the top of the main board, there's always going to be some destination cards on display. And if you happen to go to one of those countries, you can also just simply pick up a destination card from that row and choose that card in order to explore. So icons and destination cards are visible to you if they're in your hand or in the top row of the board. And there is going to be a whole big deck of destination cards, and there are a lot of them for you to go through. So yeah, and there are ways to also clear out the row if you go on the blog track and put out new cards up there. So now that I've gone through most of the components, oh, actually here are the experience blocks. So there is a pyramid, and these are nice and wooden. So as I showed you before, on the pyramid, on the main board, you are going to randomly place these on the pyramid at the start of the game. And I'll explain how you adjust these when you take an explore action and how all of that works. And I will explain that when we get to it. And then let me just show you some souvenirs. So again, this is a prototype, so these are subject to change. So they will probably be nicer in the actual production copy, but here is an example of a souvenir, and they fit right over the countries. So you will place these onto the countries when you place your souvenirs at the start of the game. And here are some individual player components. So you are going to have all of these placed onto your own player board at the start of the game, or like this. And when you do an explore action, you're going to take one from one of the leftmost and remove it and place it on the city that you just explored. And then no one else can explore that city. They can stop in it, they can pass through it, but they cannot explore it. And once someone has removed and explored all 8 cities, all 8 tokens, countries, not cities rather, then the game end will trigger. So, you know, these tokens on your board are also kind of showing you how the game is progressing and whether the game end is going to trigger. So now let's actually get into how you play. So on your turn, you are going to do one main action. The main actions available are to explore, blog, rest, work. And in addition to that, you can do a bonus action or travel. You can do the bonus action before or after your main action. At the start of the game, everyone is basically going to explore and travel because you will not have accumulated any likes, and you need 3 like cubes in order to activate a bonus. Another way of activating a bonus action is to use a souvenir that you've collected. And at the very start of the game, no one is going to have any souvenirs. So now let's talk about the exploration action in detail on how that works. And it goes through step by step what you're going to do. So the first thing you're going to do is you are either going to travel to where you need to explore, or you're already going to be there. So let's say you're already there. Then what you're going to do is either reveal that card from your hand if you have a destination card in hand. So let's say I want to explore France. I can reveal this card from my hand, or if it's at the top of the board on display, I can take it from there. Or I can choose to go through the Europe continent deck and find the card for France and use that to explore. Then I'm going to take one of my destination tokens, as I mentioned, and place it on France. So now I'm exploring France. Then I'm going to adjust one of the experience blocks on the pyramid. So the experiences which show on the France card, one of those I can move either up or down on the experience pyramid. The reason you want to do that is because at the end of the game, you're going to total up all the experiences you have of each type and indicate them on your score sheet. So let me just show you a score sheet because that will really illustrate to you how it works at the end of the game. So here is a score sheet, and this was mine actually. So at the end of the game, you're going to see how many of the tokens that are visible at the very top of the pyramid you have. You're going to write that number into that position on the score sheet. So let's suppose at the end of this game, culinary, the pink one, was at the very top, and I had 5 culinary in my tableau that I've explored. Then I would write the number 5 here, and then the top most position is worth 5 points, so that would give me a total of 25 for that experience. And then I'll take a look at what's on the second line of the pyramid, and so on. So you're going to write the number of icons you have showing for each experience at the end of the game, and that will give you a certain number of points. So if you have a lot of culinary, for example, then you want culinary to be higher up on the pyramid. So again, when you're exploring, you then have the option of taking one of those icons, the blocks, and moving them either up or down one row on the pyramid. So you're basically swapping its position with another block. Then you're going to put a lock token on top of it. So when someone else takes their turn right after you exploring, they can't affect that specific token in their turn. So you cannot basically move the same token twice. So then the next person who does the explore action, they'll decide which block they want to adjust, and then the lock token will move to the block that they just moved, that appeared on their card, and that was the one that they wanted to adjust. So that's how that works. So you are affecting the popularity of different experiences, and you want the ones that you have a lot of to be higher up on the pyramid, of course. After you do that, then you will check and see how many of the experiences on the country that you just explored you like and dislike according to your character that you are playing as. For every one that you like, you will get to place a like cube in one of these recessed parts of the board, and once you have 3 in these sections or 2 in this section, that would allow you to remove those cubes to activate a bonus action on a future turn. So you want to collect likes so that you can activate bonus actions. But if you have an icon that is associated with something that you dislike according to your character, then you will get a dislike cube, and dislike cubes will be put on this part of the board, which will reduce the strength of your basic actions. However, if you have a dislike cube and then you get a like in a future turn, you simply turn that dislike into a like and move it to this part of the board. So you know they're temporarily there, temporarily causing one of your main actions to be less effective, but they are easy to switch into likes and then move over to the other section. Yeah, so they're not the worst, I would say. So that is the explore action. The blog action, so again, I'm going to just post a picture. So there is a blog track at the bottom of the board. And if you decide to blog, what you're going to do is you're going to place your blog token on the country that is showing at the top of your little tableau that you are creating. I keep on calling it a tableau, I don't know, the row you're creating of countries you've explored. So let's suppose this is all, this shows you all the countries I've explored so far, and we have France at the top. So if I'm doing the blog action, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm blogging about France. And it doesn't mean that you are in France while you're blogging about France. I mean, chances are you might be there, but you might have already moved on somewhere else. And instead of exploring that country where you are right now, you've just decided to blog about France instead. So you're going to place your blog token on top of France and then blog about it. So when you blog, you look at your own player board and see how many of these things you have uncovered, right? So you start with one that's visible, and these you would have had to uncover by exploring, because your explore destination tokens would have been covering those. So let's say you had removed all of them, so that would give you a total of 1, 2, 3 icons. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at the country that you're blogging about, which are this country, and you're going to look at the position of these symbols on the pyramid. And then you're going to look at the line of that pyramid and see what blogging power each symbol gives you. You're going to total that power and be able to move your blog token on the bottom track of the board up to that many spaces. So basically, let me see if I can find it easily on the main board just to show you. But yeah, so you have the option of, let's see, I don't want to like open up the whole frickin' board again, but if it's easy, then I'll show you. If not, I won't show you. Oh yeah, here we go. It's not the worst. So like, let's suppose I had one token here, another token here, another token here. I would add this purple number with this purple number and with this purple number, and that's gonna give me a total number of spaces I can move on the blog tracker. Anytime you pass an event card, you will activate an event, and anytime you pass this symbol, that means you can remove all the cards in the destination row at the top of the board and refill them with new cards. And then at the end of the game, how far you are on the blog tracker will indicate how many points you receive. So you're going to be gaining a variety of bonuses as you go up this blog tracker. You're not going to gain everything you pass. So if you can move up to say 4 spaces, you can gain either a language token, you can either you can draw 2 personal goals and discard 1, you can gain 7 coins, or you can gain 2 like cubes. So let's suppose I decided to gain 2 like cubes. That doesn't mean I collect all of these. You are only going to get at what you stop at. However, again, if you pass any of those purple lines indicating an event or refreshing of the destination cards row, you will do that. So that is blogging. And now you cannot blog about France again. So because this has this token on top of it, that means I can't blog about France again. You can never blog about the same country twice. So that is the blog action. The rest action, when you are traveling, and I'll talk about traveling in a little bit, you're spending energy down here. And if you get really depleted, then you cannot travel. And if at any point during the game you spend 5 or more energy to travel, you're going to get a dislike cube because that's going to be something that you don't enjoy. So at some points in the game, you're going to need to rest. So everyone has these symbols showing uncovered on their board when they choose to rest. So you will replenish with these batteries and gain 1 like. However, if you uncovered these destination tokens, you will gain even more if you decide to spend that coin in order to collect these as well. And then if you decide to spend this coin because this is uncovered, then you can gain that as well. So that is the rest action, and it allows you to rest and recharge. And you will notice in the very last rest spot, there is a little symbol which shows you that you can flip one of your personality tokens on your people as long as it still complies with the personality rules. So for example, maybe halfway around exploring the world, I decided, you know what, I really don't like architecture, but I'm a nature girl. So maybe I want to switch a token and change my personality. So you can do that as well. So for example, you can switch from this to this as long as the rules still are working, meaning you don't have 2 colors showing both in like and dislike. So that is resting. Working, because you need money to explore, you're going to need to work at certain points while you are traveling the world. So again, that works in a similar fashion. You're just going to see everything you have uncovered and collect that, which may include a language token. And if you want to spend a battery, then you can collect the things that are over here as well. And this symbol means that you can draw either a destination card or a country card. When you take a country card, you basically just announce which country you want and then find that country card from the continent deck and keep it in your hand until you decide to explore it. That is a good way to see what icons are on a certain country, and that is really the only way you can see what icons are on these country cards without actually being there first. So you might want to do that. That could be something that you really want to do. So that is the work action. So as I said at the beginning, in addition to doing your main action, you can either also travel or do a bonus action. So there are different modes of travel. So you can travel by land and sea. When you are traveling by land and sea, you are basically going to count up how much energy you are spending to go somewhere based on the lines on the board. So for example, you'll see here. So like, let's suppose I'm in Chile and I want to go to Argentina. I will stop here because anytime you see a battery symbol, that's an extra stop you have to make, and then go here. So that would cost me 1, 2 energy. So 1, 2. So yeah, anytime you see one of those symbols, you have to stop there, and that costs you an energy. So you're just going to be checking how many energy it takes you to travel from one place to another, and that can be over land and sea. So that is how you travel in that regard. Another method of traveling is by air, by direct flight. So in that situation, you would use airports. So if you want to go to a certain place, you can travel there by first going to a nearby airport. So let's suppose I'm in Argentina and I want to travel to Venezuela. I don't know if it's actually going to be more beneficial for me to travel by air than by land, but basically I would go from Argentina to that airport. So I would spend 1, 2, 3 energy to get to that airport, and then I can fly from here to here. And when you fly, you count up the number of actual squares that you are going through. So it would be 1, 2 squares. So it would be 1, 2, because I'm following that flight path. That is how traveling by air works when you are taking a direct flight. Then the last mode of travel is last minute flight. In order to do a last minute flight, you have to discard a card with a certain location on it, and then you can move there directly, I believe. I never took a last minute flight, but I believe that that's how that works, but let me just double check. So yeah, discard a destination card from hand or destination row to air travel to the country on the discarded card. Or discard a destination card from hand or destination row, matching the backpacker meeple's current country to air travel to any country. So that is last minute flight. Yeah. Okay, so that's how that works. So again, when you do a main action, you can either do a travel before or after your main action, or if you've accumulated cubes or you have souvenirs that you can use, you can do a bonus action. So you cannot do a bonus action and air travel on the same turn when doing a major, one of the major actions, one of the major 4 actions of explore, blog, rest, or work. So now let's suppose you have 3 like cubes. You can discard those like cubes and do an explore action at the same time you're doing like a blog action, for example. And that can work for any of those. Or if you've collected a souvenir, which again are going to give you points at the end of the game, you can take one of your souvenir tokens, and even if you use it to activate a bonus action, it will still give you points at the end of the game. And you can place it into one of these circles to activate that bonus action. It will stay there for the rest of the game to show that you already used a souvenir to activate that bonus action, so you cannot remove this and place another souvenir there. So once you use a souvenir to activate a bonus action, you cannot activate that bonus action by a souvenir again, but you can still get cubes and remove cubes, get cubes and remove cubes to activate that bonus action. So that is how you use souvenirs to activate bonus actions. And again, these can still be used for points at the end of the game. So again, the game end will trigger once someone has explored 8 different countries and they have removed all of their 8 different destination tokens. One thing I did not mention is destination tokens make it easier for you to travel. So as more and more people start exploring the world, anytime you are traveling over a country that has a destination token on it, and it can be someone else's, you don't have to spend energy to go through that country. So it's going to be easier for you to travel as the world gets more and more explored by different players. Then at the end of the game, you will go to scoring. So once someone has triggered game end, you will finish the round so that everyone has had an equal number of turns. You do not get one more turn, you don't get one more round, so you just finish right then and there. And then you will go to game end scoring. So now let's look at the score sheet. So again, I already explained how the pyramid scoring works. You're going to add up all the icons that are indicated on the countries you have explored and put the total in that position on the pyramid, and then see how many points you get for having all those icons. And then you're going to sum up that total. So for me, I had a total of 57 for all the different icons that I had showing in my pyramid. Then you are going to see if you have any destination card bonuses. So for example, this one, if you had, for every 2 culinary symbols you have showing, you would get 3 points. So you will add up any of those bonuses you have. Then you will see how far along you are on the blog track and get points for that. Then again, for all the different languages you've learned, you've mastered, you will get points. The more languages you know, the more points you will get. And then again, souvenir tokens. The more souvenirs you have, the more points you will get. And to get a souvenir token, you have to be at the country where it is at, and each souvenir token costs 3 coins. Then you will look at public goals. So throughout the game, there were public goals that were visible on the main board, and if you achieved one of those public goals on your turn, you would have taken that public goal tile. So for example, here's a medium level one. This one says the first person to explore 2 countries in South America and 2 countries in Asia can get 10 points. So if you were the first person to do that, you would collect this on your turn and you would score those 10 points at the end of the game. So there were a bunch of public goals available on the main board, depending on player count. So you will add up your points for that. Then you will add up your points for any personal goals you met. And again, you were dealt 2 at the beginning of the game, and there is an opportunity to collect more throughout the game by blogging. So you will get points for that. And then whoever has the most points will win. And that is Atlas Explore the World. So yeah, a very cool game about exploring the world. It has all the different countries, so many cool photos. And these are photos from what I learned that were available to just use. So you didn't have to, they didn't have to pay for them because they were just available for public use, but they actually show different cool parts of different countries. So for example, here's a photograph from Libya. So they had to figure out which photos represent the different countries, and you can see all different cool facts about the country, see the flags of each country, get an idea of what languages are spoken and so on. So these are just so very cool. It's a very educational game as well, where you can learn so much about different countries, and it is so much fun. Actually, it really is fun trying to figure out where you want to travel, trying to see the best way to get points. Like, do you want to learn more languages? Do you want to try to get your icons, your experience icons at the top of the pyramid? Just so many cool things going on in this game at one time. Do you want to blog a lot? Do you want to activate more bonuses? Just a lot of different ways to gain points, and it is a very cool, very fun game, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much to Ion Game for this review copy and for giving me a chance to play this awesome game. And again, I think the Pledge Manager will be opening up sometime soon, so if you guys want to check it out, you can, I think, late pledge once it opens. And I was not paid for this how to play segment, just to put that out there. But this was a review copy from Ion Game that I received. So that was Atlas Explore the World. So let's move on. Let's talk about Cascadero. This is a 2024 game for 2 to 4 players designed by Rainer Knizia, and the art is done by Ian O'Toole, and it's published by Bitewing Games. This is a game which I backed on Kickstarter. So this is an abstract strategy game by Rainer Knizia. Now it says, it has some kind of a theme. It says, compete with other envoys to best reunite the land of El Cascadero's rule. And you're basically different, representing different kinds of leaders. So in this game it says ministers visit towns by placing their envoys adjacent to them, but towns are distrusting of single envoys, so newly placed envoys will only trigger town scoring when they are part of an established group or carry an official seal from El Cascadero himself. Towns with royal messengers at them or a history of envoy visits are even more valuable, as they willingly collaborate for even greater successes. So you must decide between 2 competing strategies: build long chains of your envoys to achieve synergies and objectives, or establish smaller separate groups of envoys to trigger timely town scoring. Both will award victory points, yet your victory points will mean nothing if you don't also reach the end of your appointed success column. So, they're trying to infuse, Rainer Knizia tried to infuse this game with a theme, but it felt very abstract, like most of his games do. So here is the board. And there are 2 different sides to the board. So we played with a little bit more advanced variant where you're also going to have more hexes. So this is the basic side of the board, and I played on this side of the board. So on this side of the board, you're going to have other tiles that are placed out at the start of the game. Here are the various tracks that the description was talking about. So each player is associated with a certain color, and you are going to try to get to the top of your track in order to score at the end of the game, because only those who reach a certain level of their track are eligible for victory. If no one reached that top level of their track, then if you achieve then you'll still add up points, but whoever wins has a minor victory. So that's how that works. So you will be trying to visit towns that are associated with and score towns that are associated with your own player color in this game. So at the start of the game, you're going to place out, if you play the advanced variant, these different tiles on the matching spaces, and on top of some of them will go those heralds, those white icons. This I believe is the round tracker, if I remember correctly. And so basically you're on your turn going to place out one of your envoys onto a tile, onto a hexagon. When you place out an envoy onto a hexagon, it can't be next to a town, and it cannot be, you can't place it directly next to a town once you place it to begin with. So like, for example, if this is the first envoy I'm placing, I can't place it directly next to that town. However, I can place it here, and then in a subsequent turn, I can place an envoy there next to that town, which would then at that point trigger a scoring, because now it's a part of a group. So in that case, you can place it next to a town. So it's just a strategy game, an abstract strategy game with rules about how you place different envoys, and you're going to be scoring and going up various tracks. So when you score a town, you're going to see, town scoring is triggered when the following two conditions are satisfied. Group, the envoy you placed is part of a group. If you place a single envoy that is not part of a group next to a town, this does not trigger a town scoring, except for envoys with seals. So if you earn any seals, which you will gain by going up various tracks, you can place an envoy on top of a seal and it'll count as a group, and then you can trigger a town scoring. The second condition is first contact. The group that exists after you place your envoy was not in contact with the town before you placed that envoy. This means no other envoy of the group was on any neighboring field of the town, which is how I just kind of explained. When you place your envoy, you don't want to place a single envoy next to a town, because then it wouldn't be that group's first. So then if you turn that envoy into a group, it wouldn't be the first contact, so you wouldn't be able to trigger a scoring. And then for points, if you will gain 1 point. So let's see. If the placement of your envoy triggers a town scoring, advance your cube on the success track of the corresponding color. How many spaces you advance varies based on the following criteria. First envoy. If the envoy you placed is the very first envoy of any color on one of the neighboring fields of the town, advance your cube by 1 space on the track that matches that town. Further markers. If there are already any envoys on neighboring fields of the town, advance your cube by 2 spaces. And then herald. If there is a herald in the town, advance your cube by an additional space. So in total, you will only be able to advance 2 or 3 spaces. So that is how that works. So basically, you are placing an envoy, seeing if you trigger a town scoring, so on. And you're going up various tracks. And as you go up various tracks, you're going to gain maybe some bonus actions like moving an envoy. You might get a seal. And a seal will allow you to place down an envoy next to a town and immediately trigger a town scoring, because it counts as a group. So you will try to gain seals as you advance up the different tracks. The game end is triggered when the shield of any one player has passed over the flower icon on the score track at the end of their turn. So that means they have at least 50 victory points. The game also ends when a player is to place an envoy but has no envoys left. Then only those players whose cubes have reached the 3rd achievement banner on the last space of their color success track qualify for victory. And then among those players, whoever has the most points will win. So you kind of want to maybe focus on gaining points for your own town color so that you can advance on your own specific track in order to get to that 3rd banner. And again, as you're going up tracks, you might get some other like actions that you can do which are associated. You will look over and see if there's anything there. These are special spaces which require you to score at least 2 to jump over them. Like, so let's suppose my marker's here. I can't stop here if I get only 1 point. Like, let's suppose I scored 1 point on a blue town. It would still leave me stranded here. I would need to score 2 points to jump above that space. So 1, 2. That's how you move farther up above those X spaces. The special track over here, it's a different track. It's special and it has other bonuses on that side. You know, some of the actions you might trigger if you are playing with the advanced mode, you might get to move a herald from one tile to another, which would, you know, allow you to maybe score more points. Some of them, if you place an envoy on top of them, will simply just give you some points and so on. So yeah, so I did not do too great in this game. My opponent definitely won, and there are achievements as well that you can earn. So some achievements will allow a player to score them if they are the first player to do it, but then other achievements you can still try to get even if other players have achieved them. So, you know, achievements might be, for example, all your 5 cubes reach the first achievement banner on the success track. If you are the player to do that, you will get 3 points. You know, you have 3 seals in front of you, meaning you have collected 3 seals, but you haven't used them, and so on. Another one is if you connect 2 towns of the same color with one of your groups, meaning you are creating like a long chain of envoys, claim the corresponding achievement and score 2 victory points. Each player may collect 1 achievement of each color, so that's one that all players can try to achieve. However, if you are the first one who claimed an achievement for all 5 colors, you immediately also claim the above achievement and score a further 10 victory points. So yeah, so that's possible to do as well. So there's different achievements and stuff that you can try to score, but very much an abstract strategy game with very little theme really involved. Like, you don't really feel like you are ministers or whatever they were trying to, like, you know, connect towns and, you know, whatever the theme was. I don't even remember what the theme was now. So yeah, it did not feel very thematic at all. But yet again, it's just another Rainer Knizia strategy game. And if you enjoy Rainer Knizia strategy games, then this might be one worth checking out because it has really nice components and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was Cascadero. So let's move on. So last week, I somehow totally skipped over the section of games that I am backing and so on. So let me just talk about that first. So I am backing Colosseum, the new version of Colosseum on GameFound, and this is by Fantasia Games. The reason I'm backing this is because I've played the Days of Wonder edition, not the Tasty Minstrel one, but I believe I played the Days of Wonder edition twice, and I really enjoyed it. And you know, Fantasia goes above and beyond with their components and everything, and it was a game I really enjoyed. So for that reason, I am backing like the deluxe all-in version of Colosseum, just because it looks very, very cool. So yeah, so let me just see how many days that has left. And so on. Okay, so wow, it's raised over $279,000 at the time I'm shooting this video, and it has 8 days left. So yeah, around 2,300 backers. Insane. So yeah, so backing that, I say insane though I'm one of the insane people contributing to that. And then the next game I'm backing, so I finally did decide that I want to back Cozy Cat Cafe. So currently I am backing it. That may or may not change, I don't know, but it does look very cozy. It looks very cute. So yeah, so currently backing that as well. Again, that may or may not change, you know, because I feel a little bit burned by some Kickstarters that I back that I think look really amazing, and then I get them and I play them and then I'm like, seriously, like I spent money on this. And I really felt that way about Ginza Retro Cafe, which looked really cute, and that's partly my own fault for never watching any how to play videos. And I know that that's completely ironic with me being a content creator who goes through, you know, who talks about how to play certain games, but I myself don't enjoy watching other people's how to plays and so on. So yeah, so I know that that's completely, you know, ironic and, you know, contradictory, but that's just the way it is. So yeah, so I never watch videos of game content. So, you know, the reason, you know, so if I get burned by a Kickstarter that I backed, it's probably my own fault. Yeah, so yeah, so currently backing Cozy Cat Cafe, but again, that might change. So now let's go on to some new arrivals. So I had 2 games show up very unexpectedly from Devere, and as you all know, Devere is like my favorite publisher, and usually when Devere is sending me a shipment, I get a shipping notification and I get some kind of an email that lets me know that certain games are under embargo so that I can't talk about them and so on, but that did not happen in this case, so I'm just going to assume that I can show these games and talk about them. I haven't played them yet, but I'm hoping I can talk about how they play in next week's video because I'm super eager to play these games. So the first one I'll show you is a smaller box game for 1 to 2 players. So you can play this solo, or you can play it in kind of like a cooperative mode, which I don't plan on doing. I plan on playing this solo. So that is Ace of Spades by Benja Amorin, and the art is done by David Rubin. And it just looks super cool. It's a magnetic box. I mean, just look at that cool spot gloss and all of that. Very cool. So it's a magnetic box that you're going to open like this. And then look at the inside of the box. It is so beautiful, just really, really beautiful. And I already unboxed it, and it comes with this really cool thing to keep track of certain like stats and so on. It's kind of related to poker, I believe, this game. So it actually comes with a whole deck of cards with cool artwork. And it comes with a promo card, which is super cool, like this holographic one. I'm a sucker for holographic cards. I actually really like them. And then it comes with a whole stack of these really other cool cards. So yeah, so this is cardboard. So I don't know, maybe this is like used to cover up something. I don't know, but the artwork is just very cool. So let me just show you one side of the cards first, and then I'll show you the other side. So on this one, on this side of the cards, it shows like different kinds of like people or characters with different kinds of actions, I believe. Well, like, just look at the art style, just very unique. So yeah, so that's an example of the front. And then on the back, it just shows different locations. So yeah, again, just super duper cool. So it's definitely got like a Western, like demonic theme going on. Just very, very cool. I mean, my first thought when I saw this game was the TV show Community and their Western paintball episode. Like, that was the first thing that came to mind as soon as I saw this box. And the actor Josh Holloway plays that one really cool character in those episodes, and I just absolutely love Josh Holloway, and I love those episodes of Community. So yeah, so that was the first thing that came to mind when I saw this box. But super excited to play this. Then the other game I received is for 2 to 4 players, and that is called Red Carpet. And it's designed by Anna Lucchini, Pau More, and Eloy Pujadas, and the art is done by Albert Montes. And that is called Red Carpet. And I also already unboxed this. So it's for 2 to 4 players, and it says it takes about 40 minutes. So as in typical like medium to heavyweight Devere game, it comes with a rule book in many different languages, and you know, miraculously everything fits in the box without box lid. So you know, Devere has this like thing, there's like a running joke, you know, how with Devere the boxes are never big enough, but the box is big enough to fit everything in this game. So you've got player cubes in different colors. I don't know what these are. It looks like some kind of like, I'll just take one out and show you. I have no idea. So I haven't even read the rule book yet. All I know is that you need a camera and like a phone camera to play this game. So it does say that in the rules. So you will need a phone camera to play this game. And it comes with stands in different colors. So you have like these like olivey color stands for standees. You have the red ones and tiny blue ones. And then I'll show you all the different things that you're going to be sticking in them. So like, for example, all these different cardboard characters. And it smells really nice. It smells very good. It's got that really lovely new board game smell. Just really, really love it. And they have front and back. So like, for example, here she is in the front with her dress, and there she is in the back. So very cool. So there's a whole bunch of different standees. I'm assuming each player gets one of these because there are 4 of them. And then there are some special tokens. Okay. And then we have this. So it has to do something with like the golden age of Hollywood, I believe. I'll read the description in a minute. And then here is the main board. Ooh, you know what? I actually did not open this up before, but oh my God, I've never seen this. But this is like this amazing like felt kind of material on the board to like really mimic a red carpet. Like that is insane. Like I have never seen that or felt that on any board before. That is really like going above and beyond. Wow. So that is very cool. Totally should have opened up the main board when I was unboxing this because that is so freaking awesome. Okay, so yeah, so that is the main board. And then I will show you the cards. And that is the only thing left to show you. So there's two different decks of cards. So let me just show you these ones. Okay, so I have cards split up into different bags, but here are some cards with this on the back. So I think that these are some kinds of scoring cards maybe. Here are cards that have this on the back. So this shows a car, like a limousine. And then here are cards that have this on the back. So these are like your movie stars, I'm guessing. Really love the artwork, by the way. And really love the smell. Like I really like DeVere. Like when you open up their new games, the smell is so nice. Like by far one of the best publishers for really nice board game smells. Just saying. Like just, yeah, I know I'm like a huge DeVere fangirl, but like seriously, like they just smell so freaking good. Okay, so those are all the different cards. So yeah, so those are all the components for this game. Super duper duper excited to play this, even though you need to use your phone to take photographs. But like, oh my God, that board with the red carpet, like unbelievably nice. Like, so yeah, so I cannot wait to play this. Yeah, just really excited. So thank you so much to DeVere for sending me these awesome games. Like, just really love them so much. I actually did, you know what? I have Transgalactica behind me, and I have played once a 4-player game of it, and then recently I was playing a 5-player game of it, because I think it goes up to 5 players. Let me count the number of players. It was me, yeah, so recently I had actually played a 5-player game of that as well. We didn't get to finish, it was running a little bit long, but we decided that we would give it another go at some other point. So yeah, so I am a huge fan of DeVere's games and just very grateful when they send me their new releases. So I really hope I'll get to play these soon and talk about them. But yeah, between these two games, which one would you want to play first? Like, honestly, really hard to say, but I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards this one just because I really love the cards and the components and the board. But this looks very cool too. So yeah, so thank you to DeVere. So let's move on. So I want to give a very quick cat update because I feel like I just, you know, give these tiny little updates, well, long updates about nothing rather. But the tiny update I want to give this week is that last week I showed you guys what the colony number 1 looks like when it's flooded. So I did add a little kitty ramp. So yeah, and I saw the cats using the ramp. They really love it. One day I went there and there was like 3 or 4 cats at the platform at the bottom of the ramp, and a couple of them were like running back and forth on the ramp. Like they really love it. Like they really love this ramp, and they love being able to not have to jump over to get onto the top part of where all the feeding stations are. So yeah, so even this like ramp is such a huge improvement for this colony, and the cats love it, and it just makes me so happy. So yeah, so I just wanted to let you guys know that there is now a ramp, and this colony has come such a long way since I learned about these cats that live behind this dumpster. Like, you know, since I started feeding them like 2 years ago, I've added so many pallets, you know, so that they are not like having to trudge through water, swampy water and stuff to get to the feeding station. Have added so many pallets, have added multiple shelters, 3 really big ones and 2 smaller ones. Just, yeah, I've added feeding stations. Like, it's just, yeah, it's a huge improvement since when I first discovered what these cats were like when they were living there. Like, oh my God, and I'm so happy for them. I just really love them. So yeah, so that's just my very quick cat update. So let's move on. So fiction book club, so I am the absolute worst, Sandra, so please forgive me, but I did not finish the book. In fact, I did not read a single chapter, but I have a good excuse, and I'm going to blame it on my friend Yoon Menker, who is in town visiting because he went to Origins, and then he came here and because he wanted to go to Millennium Games to host like an Ion Games demo day event there. And since he's here, he's been mentoring me on my elephant game design and really pushing me to get some iterations out so we can playtest them. And I think so far we've playtested 3 iterations of my game. And in fact, after I shoot my video today, I have to, work on another iteration in order to playtest that before he leaves. So I've just been super busy working on my elephant rescue game that I did not get a chance. So something had to be sacrificed. And so I sacrificed Fiction Book Club for this week because I really didn't want to sacrifice nonfiction. So I'm really sorry, but I did not finish the book. But I do want to just say that I will finish it for next week. So we'll wrap up Legends and Lattes next week. And then we will move on to our next fiction book, which I just want to show here in case anyone else is interested. So it is The Free People's Village, a novel by Sim Kern. And it just looks so freaking cool. Like I really, look at that. Like how freaking cool does that look? Oh wow, look at that. That is so cool. That is very interesting. Wow. Just a very cool looking book, and I cannot wait to read it, especially because the author actually mentioned this book in the chapter we were supposed to read for our nonfiction book this week. And the author mentioned how these are both, the covers are illustrated by the same author, and you can totally see a resemblance, and I guess artist, and you can totally see that the artist really loves orange. So yeah, or like this really like bright highlight neon orange color. So yeah, but the cover is so freaking cool. So yeah, so we will start this after next week. So again, very sorry, but yes, I hope you can forgive me for not having done the fiction reading for this week. Sorry. Okay, so let's move on. So for this week's nonfiction book club, we were supposed to read chapters 6 and 7 of Genocide Bad by Sim Kern, and it was a little bit longer than what we've been reading, but I think it was very much worth it, like a really good read, and I highlighted quite a bit. So chapter 6 is called But Hamas, and this is about the question that almost every pro-Palestinian person who has been speaking up against the genocide is met with. As soon as they start talking about how genocide is bad, they start talking about how, Zionism is bad. Oh, it's always like, but Hamas, like, do you condemn Hamas? Like, how many news anchors have we seen ask scholars and other people, but do you condemn Hamas? Like, they never want to just talk about colonization. They never just want to talk about the apartheid of Israel. They never just want to talk about the genocide. It's always like, but Hamas, but do you condemn them? So this whole chapter is about that. So the author says, but Hamas comments try to derail you from talking about Israeli violence by asking you to first address violence of the Palestinian resistance. So this author basically uses this chapter to talk about how there are more important questions that should be asked and answered rather than but Hamas. But I think the author does a really good job of just like laying out, how they address these kinds of questions. So they just mentioned what I just mentioned, like how they will first, respond to any criticism of Israel by asking you to first condemn any local populations daring to take up arms and resist their own extermination. So it says, we need to talk about the important distinction between violence that comes from imperial colonizers versus violence that comes from indigenous people defending their homes. And it says, but notice, you were trying to say genocide bad, and now they've got you arguing semantics, which, always happens. The author talks about how we need to contradict blatant lies about the Palestinian resistance, such as Hamas beheaded babies. And then the author talks about how that turned out to be a complete lie, yet notice how all those people, even in the board game industry, who were saying, oh, Hamas beheaded babies, never came forward to admit that they were wrong when that was proven to be a lie. So it says Israelis are the only military force that have actually beheaded babies over the past year. The author talks about how what's trickier and more time-consuming than contradicting outright lies is picking apart the strands of partial truth. So then this author talks about the Hamas Charter, because one thing that you will see a lot of people say is that the Hamas Charter calls for the genocide of Jews. And that is something that even Alex from Board Game Co. and other content creators said on October 7th or post October 7th. And Alex, who I exchanged messages with, and I told him that the Hamas Charter does not say that, the current charter does not say that, and he said he would issue a correction. Did he ever issue a correction? Nope, never talked about it again, and yeah. So the Hamas Charter at one point did talk about the struggle against Jews and talked about, killing Jews, but the charter was revised. So in 2017, the charter was revised when Sinwar became like the leader of Hamas. So it says, Hamas affirms that its conflict is with the Zionist project, not with the Jews because of their religion. Hamas does not wage a struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish, but wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupied Palestine. And they also explicitly condemn anti-Jewish hate. It says, Hamas rejects the persecution of any human being or the undermining of his or her rights on nationalist, religious, or sectarian grounds. Hamas is of the view that the Jewish problem, anti-Semitism, and the persecution of the Jews are phenomena fundamentally linked to European history and not to the history of the Arabs and Muslims or to their heritage, which is 100% true. And if anyone studied old Islamic history, they would find this to be 100% true, because Muslims consider Jews to be people of the book. And any time a Muslim ruler conquers non-Muslim lands, Jews are to be respected because they are the people of the book. They're allowed to be allowed to practice their religion freely. You're not supposed to burn down synagogues. You're not supposed to burn their holy books because God's name is even mentioned in their holy books and prophets' names are mentioned in their holy books. So we don't desecrate synagogues and churches. We don't desecrate the Bible and the Torah like people do to the Quran, which we see time and time again happening in Palestine. Like the amount of footage I've seen of IOF occupying forces, desecrating the Quran by peeing, urinating on it, setting them on fire and doing all kinds of things. You do not see Muslims doing that to the books of the people. So Christians and Jews, we are to respect them. And that has always been the case throughout history. And as I've mentioned on this channel many times, when in the Ottoman Empire, for example, Jews and Christians were allowed to have their own courts, but Jewish women actually opted to use Muslim courts because they were afforded more rights through Muslim courts than Jewish courts. So 100% Hamas believes in what they wrote in the updated charter. Jews are not the issue, it's Zionism. Jews have never been the issue, it's always been Zionism. So yes, and then, the author talks about jihad and how that term is misinterpreted, which is 100% true, and, how it's really unfair how those who are pro-Palestinian have their terms always misinterpreted, and we're always having to defend our language that we use. Yeah, Zionists never have to defend their language. Yeah. I thought that this line was really funny. If you give a Zionist a cookie, they're going to ask you to condemn Hamas, which is I think 100% true. So yeah. I like how the author points out how many children Israel has killed, because, we're always expected to condemn Hamas, but is anyone ever asked to condemn Israel? Because here it says, every year Israel abducts an estimated 500 to 700 Palestinian children at gunpoint. Since October 7th, at least 640 children in the West Bank have been arrested by the IOF, the Israeli occupation forces, many facing medical neglect, abuse, and even torture in Israeli prisons, which we've seen so much proof of. Furthermore, before October 7th, Israel had killed 41 Palestinian children in the West Bank. Yes. So yeah, are we ever, is anyone ever asked to condemn Israel? But do you condemn Israel? But do you condemn Israel? No one ever asked that question, which they should. And then, it talks about the Lancet Journal and how the Lancet Journal, a reputable medical journal, estimates how many people have actually been killed in Gaza, but their estimates are, from back in 2024, and the numbers are actually much, much higher now. But yes, we can safely say that well over 150,000 people, killed is at least attributable, to the genocide. At minimum 150,000 at this point in time. Yeah, and it says it says for whatever action you're being asked to condemn Hamas, whether that's killing, beheading babies, which Hamas has not done, and so on, the IOF has done something similar, more extremely and more frequently, to more people for a longer period of time, and they fucking started it. 100%. And the one thing that this author retorts people who ask them, but Hamas, do you condemn Hamas? This author says, forget Hamas, my tax dollars don't fund Hamas. 100%, but our tax dollars, if you're an American, and maybe in a lot of European countries, do fund the genocide. So yes, my tax dollars fund the genocide. My income funds the genocide. Yes. Then this author starts talking about Sinwar. So I just think it's so... Oh wait, actually before we get into Sinwar, yes. Sorry, I just want to see where that starts because there was something I kind of highlighted. This author talks a lot about how we watch all these movies and stuff that depict these kinds of post-apocalyptic scenes, and the author talks about the series Black Mirror and the episode Metalhead, which is I've seen, which is kind of very terrifying. And then we kind of witnessed the scene with the killing of Sinwar. Oh no, before we get to Sinwar. So this author, has raised funds for this one person who, this couple who was going to have a baby in Palestine, and unfortunately they couldn't escape. And at one point, this husband, it says, Muhammad texted me that an armed quadcopter was patrolling the street outside the building in Rafah where they were then staying. A dog right outside their window had just barked at the drone and been shot dead. Muhammad was terrified because there was no glass in the window. Only a thin curtain separated his sleeping family from the quadcopter, which would attack anything that made a noise. What if baby Heba, his newborn baby, woke up and started screaming? We in the West, or anywhere maybe in this world, if you're watching my video, this includes you, we do not have to worry about something like this. This is post-apocalyptic, terrifying stuff that is happening to the Palestinians. Quadcopters that will shoot at anything that makes a noise. This is sci-fi level, depravity. It's insane. You cannot imagine what these people are going through because we live such cushy lives, which the author themselves talk about. So now we're gonna get into Yahya Sinwar. So at the time Yahya was killed, there was a drone that was you can look up this video. You can still look it up, and I looked it up. I had seen it before, but then as the author was talking about it, I decided to look at it again because they gave such a description of it that I myself would not have been able to do the first time I viewed the video. So the author says that according to Western journalism, only white people representing colonial empires are allowed to do violence in self-defense. Black and brown people, like Palestinians, who fight back are engaged in terrorism, which is 100% true. So imagine that it was a country of white people that had been colonized by a group of brown people. So let's reverse the races and ethnicities of the Palestinians and Israelis, and let's suppose that there was a leader of armed resistance sitting there, missing his arm, bleeding out. Drone comes in, sees him, he picks up a stick with his other hand in one last attempt of resistance and throws that stick at this drone. So many people would have been praising that person and been like, wow, that person is so brave. They died fighting for what they believe in. They were not a coward. They were not hiding. They were not hiding behind human shields, which, is something that Palestinians are always accused of, which has been proven to be a lie. And in fact, Israel has been shown to actually use human shields time and time again. As we always say, every accusation is a lie. So just imagine, just switch the races of these people. people, and everyone would have been praising Yahya Sinwar for his act of resistance, his act of bravery, his last act of bravery. Like, this is a man who truly believed in his cause. Like, he truly believed in Palestinian liberation and devoting his life to it and dying for that cause. Like, that is very admirable. Most humans would not do that. Like, would I die to save elephants? Would I die to save the Palestinian people? Would I die to save, you know, the animals that I care so much about? I don't know. I don't think so. Like, in my mind, I keep on saying the animals need me alive, the Palestinians need me alive in order to spread awareness. Am I going to pick up a weapon and go and fight for these causes that I believe in? Like, is that actually going to do anything? Like, most of us are cowards. Most of us are never going to do that. Most of us are never going to die for the causes that we believe in. Yeah, but you know, this author is basically talking about all this, like, really, like, District 12 from the Hunger Games vibes that are happening in real life. So after Yahya Sinwar was killed, you know, it says that on Israeli television, you know, on-air personalities were, like, you know, in their brightly lit studios in their $1,000 suits with their perfect hair and teeth. You know, they were, like, passing around sweets and enjoying the fact that Sinwar was killed, you know, while they're starving a population next door on occupied land. So yeah, but you know, all these people who watch these movies like Star Wars, like the amount of people in the board game industry who praised Senator Mothma's speech, which I, you know, read the transcript of in a previous video, like this incredible speech about how the what was it, Gorman people, I think they were called Gorman, the Gorman people were being genocided, and the senator is, you know, talking in this galactic senate about how it's a genocide and how people's voices are being suppressed and how the imperial powers are, like, killing people and suppressing people. Incredible speech. And so many people in the board game industry, like, talked about what an incredible speech it is, yet those same people have never condemned the genocide of the Palestinians. Like, such fucking cognitive dissonance exists in this industry. It is insane. Like, all these people who would watch Star Wars, watch the Hunger Games, watch all these shows and think that they themselves are the same people who would be on the right side of history but have never condemned the genocide. Like, how fucking blind are you to your own cognitive dissonance? Insane. But the author talks about how when the IOF released this video of Yahya Sinwar, they did themselves a disservice. Like, it ended up being a big PR blunder because people did recognize his bravery. People did praise him. People were like, wow, this man is actually brave. He's not hiding in tunnels like Israel accused him of. He's not hiding behind human shields. He was out there in the open, like, truly fighting for what he believes in. So yeah, it was a huge PR blunder for Israel. And then it talks about his history and what caused him to, you know, get into the armed resistance. And so much about him I did not know. Like, I was really, you know, I won't say shocked, but I shouldn't be shocked, but just very surprised to learn that, you know, he had spent 22 years in Israeli prisons. I did not know that. And that he had been interrogated, you know, tortured for 180 hours. And the person who tortured him for 180 hours diagnosed Sinwar as psychotic. Like, okay, yeah, we're supposed to believe a torturer's diagnosis. Okay. Yeah. And as, you know, the author discussed, it was Sinwar who revised the Hamas charter. You know, it was his family whose home had been stolen during the Nakba. They were killed out, they were removed from their homes during the Nakba, the catastrophe. Yeah, so it's should be no surprise that this is a man who would engage in resistance because he lived through so much horror that the occupying state of Israel inflicted on him and his family. Yeah, so, you know, this is how you get people to join the resistance, by, you know, making them live in apartheid, by denying them basic rights, by building these electric fences to keep them out and prevent them having access to you know, hospitals and clean water and food and electricity, you know, at all times of the day. Israel controls all of these things. So yeah, do you expect people to just live as third-class citizens, or not even citizens, and not do anything about it after you stole their homes and burned down their olive trees and their orange trees? Like, no, like, fuck you. People are going to resist. That's why it is an international law given right for occupied peoples to resist by force. It is 100% allowed by international law for people to resist by force because they literally can't do anything else. Like, resisting in other means has not resulted in anything for them. Yeah. The author talks about Ghassan Kafani and his quote, "A man is a cause." And then the author says, "Most of us are a bundle of anxieties and materialistic aspirations wrapped in flesh." 100% true. Like, if you're watching this video, that probably applies to you just like it applies to me. However, Yahya Sinwar was a cause, and he truly was. Yeah. It says, Western Empire exports endless violence around the world to ensure obedience to its core project, funneling ever more wealth and resources in human blood and entire ecosystems into the foundries of capitalism. Also, we can make rich people richer and richer and richer until there's nothing left of life on Earth. 100% true. And this is why I've been saying for many, many months that everything is tied together. The genocide is tied together with what is happening in the US. So all those people in the board game industry who keep on talking about all the atrocities happening in the United States, but have not once spoken up about Palestine, like, completely blind to the truth of capitalism and how everything is connected. Everything that happens in America is connected to what is happening in Palestine. Yeah. And then this author talks about, the Warsaw Ghetto, and it says, the whole world was in pretty unanimous agreement that the Warsaw Ghetto uprising was justified, and Jews celebrate its fighters as heroes. So this author draws a comparison between Jews who revolted against the Nazi soldiers for their freedom. And so between them and Palestinians who are fighting for their freedom. And it says, but when Hamas fighters are trading fire with the IOF among the rubble of Gaza City and Rafah, the parallels are striking, especially considering that the IOF have admitted to learning from Nazi tactics during the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. So when we say the oppressed have become the oppressor, like, there is so much proof for it. We have seen so many IOF occupying forces, soldiers talk about where they have learned their tactics. They actually learned their tactics from the Nazis themselves, and they themselves have become the people who are committing a genocide now. On page 90, there's like this long paragraph. I just put like a highlighter mark next to the whole paragraph because like it talks about some of the things that we have witnessed during this genocide. Just really horrific things. And seeing it in words doesn't even really make you realize the extent of the horrific things that these Palestinians are going through. Like the amount of bodies I've seen, just disintegrated into like pieces of flesh and small pieces of bones, the amount of beheaded babies with their heads split open, the amount of babies and children with limbs missing. I mean, we always say babies because we feel like that will evoke more sympathy, but it happens to adults too. And even when it happens to adults, it's horrific because these men and these women do not deserve this either. No one deserves this. These are innocent civilians who just want their homes back. No one deserves that. Then this author talks about how, they would rather be murdered than kill anyone. So they were talking about whether they themselves would be able to pick up a gun and shoot it. But then they said, in fact, alone in an alley, if anyone was about to do to anyone else the kinds of things I have seen done to the children of Gaza, I'd pull that trigger. And that's why anyone pretending to be baffled by the existence of violent Palestinian resistance is full of shit, because everyone would do that. If you had a gun pointing to the person you love the most, are you saying you would just let that person shoot them? And that's it? And you'd be like, oh, okay, nothing I can do. No, if you had a gun, you would take that gun and you would point it at the person who's pointing a gun at your loved one, and you would fucking pull the trigger. And if you're saying otherwise, then yeah, I think you're full of shit. Yeah. Let's see. This author talks about the Hannibal Directive. So the author says that because of the Hannibal Directive, they don't know how many of the 1,200 Israeli victims of October 7th were killed by Hamas and how many were killed by the IOF to prevent more hostages being taken captive. So if you don't know what the Hannibal Directive is, it's a directive given to IOF soldiers to kill everyone because they don't want Israelis kidnapped and then to be used as basically hostage exchange for hostage exchanges, because there's thousands upon thousands of Palestinians being held in Israeli torture prisons without any kind of charge. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, one of the lines that the author says is, "Does the world expect us to be well-behaved victims while we're getting killed?" That's what the world expects of the Palestinians. Like, they expect them to just be, well-behaved victims. Like, oh, sorry, you don't have access to water, too bad. You don't have access to healthcare, too bad. You don't have access to whatever, too fucking bad. You just need to be well-behaved. And if you're well-behaved, then we'll give you what you want. And we've seen time and time again from all the books we've read in the past that is 100% fucking false. Israel and the United States have no intention of ever giving the Palestinians anything. Not a state, not freedom, nothing. Yeah. And it says here, it's not in any way fair that imperial powers like Israel can mass abduct and mass murder indigenous Palestinian children as they've done throughout their 76-year history and still be considered a respectable nation in the eyes of the world. Meanwhile, impoverished resistance fighters using homemade bullets and mortars are held to much higher standards of military decorum. Israel can mass murder hundreds of thousands of civilians and still participate in Eurovision and the Olympics, which is true and just bullshit. And the calls for Israel to be banned from those events are labeled anti-Semitic by Western media. Meanwhile, Palestinian resistance fighters are vilified as terrorists for killing even a single Israeli. And anyone who publicly advocates for Palestinian rights to armed resistance will be dismissed as a terrorist sympathizer and face severe material consequences, up to and including assassination. I just want to stop here and just talk about an individual in the board game industry, Eric Lang. So after October 7th happened, what did Eric Lang do? Did he talk about all the years of, Palestinians being tortured by Israel and how what Hamas did was armed resistance? No. The first thing he did was he condemned Hamas as a terrorist organization, and he expressed sympathy, as one should, for the Israeli victims. But as one should not do is, propagate the lie that Hamas is a terrorist organization when they are an armed resistance group. What they did is engage in terror tactics in order to achieve their goals, but they have not done anything worse than Israel has ever done to them. And has Eric Lang ever condemned Israel? Never, not once. He's never once condemned Israel for, what they do to the Palestinians. So yeah, it says this double standard is not fair, but that's how Western Empire maintains its dominion, which we know. The Geneva Conventions aren't to be applied to the United States and its allies, but they provide a convenient pretext for the U.S. to invade or bomb or orchestrate a coup in any nation in the global South with a capital GS, because, that's referring to, well, you get it if you read this book, the global South that doesn't bow down to U.S. interests. Any country that even just tries to protect its wealth and nationalize those resources, like Iran, will be accused of violating international law for some reason or another, and sanctions, assassinations, and drone strikes are sure to follow, just like Iran. And for those who dare to violently attack a Western imperial power, well, for them, the sky's the limit in terms of punishment, and that punishment will not be constrained by the Geneva Conventions or any UN resolution. 100% true. Yeah, just really, just so freaking awful. Yeah. Yeah, the author says that, you know, most people haven't said anything about Palestine. Most people in the world haven't lifted a single finger or spoken a single public word in solidarity with Palestine. Yeah, you know, the author talks about how Israel has exterminated all members of at least, and you know, at the time that they wrote this, it's been much more since then, all members of at least 902 families in Gaza. The author talks about how in the book, The 100 Years War on Palestine, Rashid Khalidi talked about you know, the Intifada and Palestinians using armed resistance to resist. And so Ahmed Iqbal, or was it Iqbal Ahmed rather, Iqbal Ahmed, he questioned whether armed struggle was the right course of action against the PLO's particular adversary, Israel, because he said that the use of force only strengthened a pre-existing and pervasive sense of victimhood among Israelis. A unified Israeli society reinforced the most militant tendencies in Zionism and bolstered the support of external actors, which is true. Unfortunately. And then we saw that this, you know, in the first Intifada, you know, it wasn't violent. It was the second Intifada. So the first Intifada was a non-violent uprising consisting of strikes, boycotts, demonstrations, and civil disobedience. And then, you know, Israel, of course, responds violently even to non-violent demonstrations, as we saw during the March of Return. I think it was in 2018 that happened, right? And then we see the second Intifada happen, which is violent and does have, you know, suicide bombings and all of that happening. And then the author goes on to talk about how the PLO fell to elite capture. And the author talks a little bit about that, which is very interesting, I found to be. But a lot of this was already discussed in the 100 Years War on Palestine, which we read about. And then, you know, the author says the second Intifada was extremely violent compared to the strikes and boycotts of the first. It says the bombers traded their lives to inflict some of the pain and grief so familiar to Palestinians onto random Israeli people. It says the largest portion of suicide attacks came from Hamas, but then, you know, that changed, of course, later on, and they stopped doing that. So, you know, this Intifada constituted a major setback for the Palestinian national movement. Which is, you know, unfortunate, but that's the truth. And then we had the 2006 parliamentary elections in which, you know, Hamas came into power, and then you see Yahya Sinwar, you know, come as the leader. And then even after that, you see nonviolent resistance movements, which are responded with violence, which was the Great March of Return in 2018. And Israeli forces responded to these nonviolent protests with mass murder, killing 266 people and wounding over 30,000. And if you watch footage from the March of Return, you will see there's a term for it. We've discussed it before, where Israelis intentionally target the legs of boys and men in order to permanently maim and cause them to be disabled. So they will purposely target parts of the legs of boys and men so that they become disabled permanently and maybe have their legs amputated. Yes. What else? Yeah, it says, the author says, people can only be reasonably expected to march peacefully into live gunfire for so long. So here they were in 2018 trying again non-violently to get some rights. And what happened? They were met with violence. So of course Yahya Sinwar is going to come up with this plan that involves abducting Israelis so that he can hopefully exchange them for some Israeli prisoners, because that's how he himself got freed from Israeli prisons, was through a hostage exchange. So The author quotes Obi-Wan Kenobi, "If you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." When you kill the leader of a resistance movement, you are not killing the resistance movement. You are aiding and abetting that resistance movement by showing that, yes, like you, the occupying force, are not willing to talk to those you are mistreating. You're not willing to listen to them. You're instead going to kill their leaders, and then you are going to inspire even more and more people to join the resistance. Says since October 7th, more people worldwide have rallied to Palestine's cause than ever before. Because it's become even more clear the fundamentally racist nature of Zionism. And it says a third of teenage U.S. Jews now sympathize with Hamas. And then it talks about how if people, want to leave Israel, it might cause like a decline in Israel's economy because, they've brought in so many educated people into Israel. But then because of, reasons like violence and other things like that, they decide to leave. So it says their departure could cause Israel's economy to collapse. And then, the author talks about the costs of genocide and that Israel is learning, just like the Nazis learned, that genocide is extremely costly and difficult to pull off. It says, what else? Let's see. Yeah, armed resistance to colonization is not an idea that can be killed. So Hamas and Hezbollah will never be defeated through force. Yep. And war profiteers. So the author talks about war profiteers. So 2023 was the most profitable year in history, with the global defense budget jumping to a record high of $2.4 trillion. This is something that people don't ever want to talk about, is how there's certain really rich individuals who profit from war. And it's in their interest to keep war going on. And again, a huge connection between what's happening in the United States and the genocide, yet people in the board game industry do not want to make that connection and still will not condemn the genocide. Yeah. What else? Occupation breeds resistance, inevitably, necessarily, historically, always, everywhere. So that's a quote from Khalidi. If Israeli opinion continues to turn against this war, they may run out of soldiers to fight it. And if U.S. public opinion turns overwhelmingly and bipartisanly against Israeli aggression, far more decisively than it is right now, we may actually be able to stop the flow of armaments and aid to Israel, which would render their apartheid state non-viable in a matter of months. Yeah. It's interesting how Israel assassinated an author, because words inspire people. Words can cause people to join causes. So Israel assassinated Ghassan Kanafani and his niece, who was in the car as well when they blew him up, and his niece. Yes. The author says, talking about Israeli terrorism and all of that, let's not forget that in just the first 5 months of this genocide, Israel killed more children than were killed over the past 4 years in all armed conflicts worldwide. So, for all those people who care about babies, like, why aren't they caring about the genocide? They were so outraged over the fake babies that were supposedly beheaded by Hamas, which was proven to be a lie. But do you think they care about all the Palestinian babies being killed? No. What else? Okay, so let's just go on to the next chapter, which is much shorter, and it says, why won't anyone think of the colonizers? So this is saying, whenever people want to talk about the conflict, they always talk about, well, if Palestinians get what they want, then what's going to happen to the Israelis? Like, oh, they're going to revolt and they're going to kill all the Israelis, and like, oh, the poor Jews, they're all going to die. Like, again, everyone is thinking of the colonizer and not the actual colonized people. So the author says these comments stop your focus on the safety of those who are currently experiencing genocide, and they ask you to focus instead on the safety of those doing the genociding. So these commenters might also ask you for a political plan for post-apartheid Palestine. It says, you do not need to write a constitution for Palestine's hypothetical post-Israeli future in order to condemn apartheid happening right now. And if you don't live in Palestine, you probably shouldn't be writing their constitution anyway. I'm someone who's definitely been met with this kind of question, and it's always like, can we just focus on getting the Palestinian their liberation first? But no, you always are asked to lay out a whole plan for the Palestinian people and the Israelis to make sure that none of the Israelis will be harmed. So then the author starts talking about, the U.S. Civil War and whether there was a plan to protect all the white slaveholders in America post liberation of the slaves and so on. Yeah, it talks about, President Lincoln and how he actually was not in favor of liberation of slaves until, it became clear that he needed to be. So it says Lincoln passed the Emancipation Proclamation, but only when he believed it had become strategically necessary to allow Black people who had already emancipated themselves to become Union soldiers 3 years after the outbreak of the Civil War. And it says, while Northerners justify their opposition to emancipation with tales of Negro outrages, including the murder and rape of white people. So white Northerners justify their opposition, not wild Northerners. White Northerners justify their opposition, blah, blah, blah. But in fact, Black refugees from the South were the ones most at risk of violence. So it says it wasn't Black people who formed a paramilitary to terrorize another race. That was white folks creating the Ku Klux Klan. It was not Black people who would kill thousands of people as a spectator sport. That was white folks forming lynch mobs. So it says the people who have been doing terrible violence all along are the people most likely to continue doing terrible violence. Violence is a habit. So once again, every accusation is a confession. So what will the Palestinians do to us if they gain liberation? No, it's not the Palestinians you need to be worrying about, who only want to be free and want to live freely and have their homes back. They're not out to kill anyone. They just want their homes back. It's the Israelis you should be worrying about, the Zionists, who are then going to continue attacking the Palestinians. So it says, so asking if we free Palestine, what will become of Israelis follows the same logic as Northern liberals in the Civil War era asking if we free Black people, what will become of white people? It's the wrong question to ask. History teaches us that on the first day that the Palestinian liberation is achieved in a post-Israeli society, our top concern should still be, how do we keep Palestinians safe from Israelis? How will we keep Palestinians safe from the former Israeli police and the former IOF and violent settlers who have been terrorizing them for generations? Yes. And then, the author gives a South African example of how you can end legal apartheid and still not make a dent in economic apartheid. So economic apartheid would still persist in Palestine because historically most Palestinians made their living through agriculture, and Israeli development and land mismanagement has devastated much of the region's arable land. Anti-colonial history teaches us that a more urgent question is, once Palestine is free, what happens to Palestinians? Yes. So yeah, the author says that descendants of the victims of the Holocaust are carrying out a new Holocaust in Gaza. Yeah, this was interesting. The Jews who colonized Palestine never, in fact, freed themselves from white supremacy or anti-Jewish hate or imperialism. They just negotiated a different role for themselves within empire. So true. Do they realize that? The US and the UK gave them those weapons in order to sabotage the formation of a unified Arab kingdom and protect Western economic interests in the Middle East. And those tanks came with strings attached. But as I've said before, I'm not sure that the Zionists really care that they were used as pawns, because they're still getting what they want, which is the land that they stole, the homes that they stole. Israelis are not free. They are trapped within an ever-accelerating cycle of violence that they must perpetuate to keep their supremacy intact. Compulsory military service is not a hallmark of a free society. Even the most tepid criticism of the government within Israel is met with brutal violence, arrests, and suppression. Yep. The author says, no one I know personally, when chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, has such an outcome in mind. And the outcome that they're talking about is killing Israelis. Like, none of us have that outcome in mind. And in fact, most of the people that you see that seem like they're violent pro-Palestinian people are in fact Hasbara, propaganda sock puppets. And we've seen this time and time again. Like, how many news articles have we seen, like, oh, anti-Semitic slur written on a wall in a bathroom, and then, you know, weeks later you find out that it was a Zionist Jewish person who wrote that on the wall. You know, time and time again, Zionists are perpetuating this propaganda that they're the victim, and they themselves are committing anti-Semitic crimes to keep that you know, feeling going. And in fact, they're the ones who keep on committing these anti-Semitic crimes against themselves to convince the world that anti-Semitism is still a very big problem. And what is you know, going to make anti-Semitism continue to be a problem is the genocide that Zionists are committing. Like, it's just all insanely backwards. So the author says, when someone asks you, won't anyone think of the colonizers, you can go ahead and reassure them that it's genocide bad, always, for everyone, even for colonizers in hypothetical futures. But right now, we're going to keep thinking of the colonized. Thank you very much. Yes, love that, and that is what we should be doing. So far, this book has been very interesting, and I've really been enjoying it. So let me know what you learned from this week's reading, what you found to be most interesting in the comments below. Just let me know your thoughts, and for next time, please read from pages 115 all the way to, okay, this is a little bit much, but I think we can do it, all the way to the page of, to the end of page 173. So yeah, so it's a bit more than before, but I think we can do it because it's all one chapter. So that's chapter 8, criticizing Israel as anti-Semitic. So I think that will be a very interesting chapter to read. So please read chapter 8 for next time from page 115 to the end of 174. So that was this week's nonfiction book club, and let's move on. So I'm going to try to keep this week's rant of the week a little bit short, but that person that I talked about in last week's video, Win Tavernier, who is the owner and founder of Tavern Games, which no one really cares about. So this person is also a pinkwasher. So not only do they claim to be a serious historian, yet can't name a single book that they've ever read about Palestine, they have turned out to be a pinkwasher. So there was a comment that was made on someone else's profile, and then they liked that comment, and then yeah, it turned out that they are 100% believing that, you know, Israel is, you know, the only safe haven for LGBTQ plus people and blah, blah, blah. And that, you know, they implied that it's okay that what's happening to Palestinians because, you know, gays would be killed in Palestine and so on. And so when I tried to explain to them that Gaza's LGBTQ plus laws are rooted in British colonial history and all of that, and so on. And then how I explained that, you know, if you really care about the safety of Palestinian LGBTQ plus people, then maybe you should be anti-genocide. And then he responded with how many bombs were dropped on pride parades in Gaza. Like, that was his response. Like, so, oh, you know, it doesn't matter that Israel is killing LGBTQ plus people by dropping bombs on them because there's no pride parades in Gaza. Like, this is just complete bullshit pinkwashing, which we've, you know, learned about in this book. So yeah, so not only is this person just completely ignorant about Palestinian history and the genocide and all of that, and can't name a single book, but thinks he's a serious historian, he's a full-on pinkwasher and proud of it. So yeah, so these are the kinds of people we have in the board game industry. Yeah. And then I saw a post of Eric Lang's recently. Oh yeah, before I talk about that, I just want to talk about the New York City primary mayoral candidate election. So as you know, or you might know if you watch the news, which is very exciting for people like me, but Zoran Mamdani won the primary election for the New York City Democratic candidacy for mayor. And the election will be held in November, and I'm very much rooting for him. So he is a self-proclaimed pro-Palestinian socialist, and I absolutely love that. And I just want to say that personally, I really like that he won because he is also a Shia Muslim like myself. So he is what you call a Khoja. So Khojas are Shia Muslims whose ancestors migrated from India to an African country. I don't remember which African country he's associated with. I think it's Uganda. I'm not 100% sure. But those people are called Khoja. So he is a Khoja, and he is a 12er Shia Muslim, which is what I am, Ithna Shari Shia. So very, just unbelievably happy that he won. And since then, we have seen so much anti-Muslim rhetoric. And I myself am guilty of calling it Islamophobia, but that implies that there is a reason to be scared of Islam when there is no reason to be scared of Islam. So I'm going to stop calling it Islamophobia and start calling it anti-Muslim hate, which is what it is. So we have seen so much anti-Muslim hate, even from Democratic people in office, like the New York state senator, directed towards Zoran Mamdani. So I am praying that he wins the election, and I am praying that he stays true to his ideals and his beliefs and does not turn into a sellout like AOC. So that is my prayer and my hope. But just so excited. And I think, it's shown, at least it should show people that, that we, the Democrats, or far left people, because I don't consider myself a Democrat anymore, but just like a true leftist and anarchist, but we did not want to vote for a candidate in the presidential election who was pro-genocide, which Kamala Harris was. And now you see this mayoral candidate who won the primary election for being very openly anti-genocide. So that should show people like Eric Lang and all those other people in the fucking board game industry who are trying to convince us to vote for a genocidal candidate that no, if you had just listened to us, then things would have been fine and we would have had maybe an anti-genocidal president. One can dream. So we are anti-genocide and we will always be anti-genocide, and it actually matters to people. Like that should show people like Eric Lang and Our Family Plays Games and that one designer, Trey Chambers, who were all commenting on Eric Lang's post when he was encouraging us all to vote for the pro-genocidal candidate, that you had the wrong fucking idea back then. And I just want to mention yet again, do you think any of these people have mentioned the genocide since that post? Not one peep, not a single peep. So Mick from Our Family Plays Games, Eric Lang, and all these people, Trey Chambers, who were like, oh, if you care so much about Palestinians, you should still vote for Kamala Harris, the genocidal bitch. Like, no, you did not care about Palestine. You were just using it to guilt other people who actually have a moral compass and want to live and act according to their moral compass. You were trying to guilt us into voting for a genocidal bitch. And so I'm so glad we didn't. And now you can see what really happens when people are true to their ideals, and hopefully, inshallah, God willing, Zoran Mamdani will win. And there's no reason to be afraid of Muslims. Like, he is not trying to enact Sharia law in New York City. Like, the amount of bullshit I've seen of people posting anti-Muslim hate, saying, oh, this is what's going to happen to New York now, like showing images of the Statue of Liberty wearing a burqa, like no, complete insanity. No one is trying to bring Sharia law to America. We do not want Sharia law in America. We just want basic health care. We want a right to education without, drowning in debt. We want right to affordable housing. We want all the things that everyone should want. So all the people in the board game industry who are happy that Zoran Mamdani won, but have been dead silent about the genocide, like, fuck you, like, you're still complicit in the genocide if you're still silent. Like, that's all I have to say to those people. And I think it's just completely hypocritical that they're so excited about Zoran Mamdani when they've been dead silent about the genocide for over, a year now. over 2 years now. How many years has it been? God. Yeah, almost 2 years now. So yeah, so there's that. There was something that Eric Lang posted recently, but I forgot to take a screenshot, which just, you know, just another thing that he posted that just infuriated me, but maybe I can talk about that next week anyway. So yeah, so anyway, so I guess that's all for this week. So again, oh, one thing that did infuriate me recently, or upset me recently, I guess it shouldn't upset me or surprise me. So back in 2021, when I was being outspoken against the Israeli attacks on Palestinians, in which, you know, hundreds of Palestinians were killed in 2021, and that's when I called out the owner, Helena Kappel of Burnt Island Games and Kids Table Board Gaming, for being a Zionist, and I outed her as a Zionist with the recording that I released, and that's when everyone was labeling me as dangerous and problematic, and there were mass calls in the industry to unfriend me and unfollow me. And so that all happened in 2021 because I was very outspoken against Israel and showed everyone how their dear friend Helena Kappel is a fucking Zionist who is fine with Palestinians being killed. And that's back then is when Eric Lang, you know, gave his shitty takes and then also blocked me, you know, because of how problematic I am. So that happened in 2021, and I was scheduled to be on a panel in 2021 to speak along with some other board game people. The day of the panel, I was informed that I'd been uninvited, and that was because of me being outspoken against Israel and Zionism. Kind of happened again. So I was recently invited to take part on a panel, and the leader of the panel is going to be Ruel Gaviola, who has blocked me since 2021. So since 2021, since I was outspoken against Zionism in Israel, Ruel Gaviola has had me blocked since then and thinks I'm this dangerous person. So my guess is I was invited to be a part of this panel, which he would have been leading, and I accepted the invitation. And after I accepted the invitation and filled out all the information needed, I was then informed by the organizer that, oh no, sorry, I have to retract the invitation, and given some complete bullshit reason, and you can tell that the reason I've been given is just utter bullshit. And, you know, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, but, you know, we can't have you on the panel anymore. So it's still fucking happening. Like, if you are outspoken and the only person in the industry who is like very, very outspoken against Zionism, which is the evil of today's world, which is, you know, Zionists are the fucking Nazis of today. They are their own form of evil, like in some ways way worse than Nazis. Like, if you are outspoken against Zionism, you are calling out hypocrisy in this industry, you are outspoken against Israel, you are going to lose business, as I have a lot of business. You are going to have people unfriend you, are going to have people unfollow you, you are going to get invited and uninvited from panels and so on. Like, that is just going to happen. But at least I can sleep at night knowing that I am not a fucking sellout and that I live by my ideals, unlike all of these fucking people who pretend to care about issues but in actuality really don't, because their actions do not match their words. So yeah, so I got uninvited from this panel, but I guess that should not be a fucking surprise. So yeah, so that is something that happened recently. Like, I even had Millennium Games unfollow me on Instagram. Like, I used to see that they would like my story, not like, they would view my stories on Instagram, and then I noticed that they had stopped appearing in the people who view my stories, and almost all of my stories are about Palestine, by the way. Like, I would say like 97% of my stories on Instagram since 2023 have been about Palestine and the genocide, or Iran, or, you know, anti-Muslim hate, stuff like that. And so then I noticed that they just stopped like looking at my stories, and then one day I went and checked, and yeah, they had unfollowed me, and someone who I thought was a friend from Millennium Games who works there unfriended and I guess blocked me on Facebook maybe too, and unfollowed me on Instagram. So yeah, so like I said, you know, that is just a consequence of being outspoken about the genocide, and it's really a shame because I'm on the fucking right side of history while all the others are on the wrong fucking side of history. And then someday when it becomes evident that those like me who were outspoken against the genocide were actually on the right side of history, do you think they're going to apologize for treating me the way that they have since 2021? No. Do you think anyone's going to apologize for having called me dangerous, for having called me problematic, for pointing out who Zionists are in this industry, for pointing out who is pro-Israeli and pro-genocide in this industry, for pointing out all the hypocrites in this industry? Do you think I'm going to get any apologies? None whatsoever. Instead, people like Ruel Gaviola, who have had me blocked since 2021, are just going to continue in their beliefs that they are the good ones, that they are on the right side of history and always have been, even though they've been dead silent and complicit, whereas I've been very outspoken. So at least I can sleep at night, even though, you know, it's really affected my channel, it's really affected my business, but whatever. That is, you know, it is what it is. So yeah, so that is my rant of the week. So let's move on. Today's question of the week is inspired by Atlas Explore the World. I want to know what other board games simulate actually exploring the world. And I don't think Ticket to Ride qualifies because that only explores certain continents or certain countries. I want to know about games that have to do with the entire world. None are coming to mind for me right now, but let me know if you know of any and leave them in the comments below. And until next week, bye.